G'day folks. Well, over the years we have filmed hundreds of incredibly talented people across the world. Many of these artists have gone on to produce their own videos as well. We hope you enjoy this great lesson from one of our Colour in Your Life artists.
Hi everyone, welcome to my studio in Yeppoon, Queensland, Australia. It's great to have you visit with me in this part of the world. It's my privilege to be a part of the Colour in Your Life team, and today I'm going to be talking about a media that is very close to my heart, and that is pastel. I paint in both oils and pastel, but pastel has some wonderful qualities that I want to tell you about and encourage you to give it a go. There are so many things that over the years people have thought pastels were difficult, they were fragile, they were not colour fast, they were, oh, you have to use fixative, all kinds of myths around pastel. But pastel's coming back into its own in a big way across the world. I've just come home from France where there's a real resurgence in pastels, and certainly in the States. Pastel groups popping up everywhere. Here in Australia we have our own number of societies across Australia, and we are even going to have our first National Pastel Expo in September. So that's wonderful. I'm a Master Pastelist with the Pastel Society of Australia. I have my Master Circle status with the International Association of Pastel Societies as well, and I am also a signature member of the Pastel Society of America, along with being a member of the International Guild of Realism. And the only reason I tell you that is to show you how widespread pastel in particular has become. So let's get on with this. Let's get on with myth busting. Some of the things that you need to know about pastels. Firstly, what is pastel? Pastel is one of the purest forms of pigment that you can work with. It's the same pigment that are in pastels, that are in oils, that are in watercolour, but there are different binders. Now the fact that in oils we have the binder, we have linseed oil, we have poppy seed oil, walnut oils, all those types of things, and in watercolour you have the binder of gum arabic, and of course the inclusion of water, which is a little bit uncertain sometimes depending on where you pick it up. But pastels, their purity comes from the fact that they have very little binder in them. They come in these wonderful squares of compressed pigment. The pigment is just pushed together enough to be able to hold it all into a stick of some shape or size, depending on what brand you're getting. And so in that way we have a beautiful pigment, that lovely little crystals of colour held together by a very little binder, that is incredibly colour fast because of the lack of binder. The thing that will change over a period of time is the factor of binders. In oils, the oil factor there of the linseeds and poppy seeds and so on, that is the thing that will change colour over a period of time, more than the pigments. In watercolours, of course, you have those variables of the water which will change pigment. The fact that the pigment, there's so little binder in pastel means that they are incredibly colour fast. And there are documented cases of pastels a couple of hundred years old where they've decided to renew the framing, taken the pastel out of the framing, and the pastel that was underneath the mat board is exactly the same as colour as what was exposed to the air all those years. And that to me is incredibly exciting. I'm working with a pigment that is going to stay around for a long time. Let me talk about whether they're fragile. Now, it's a misconception that pastels are quite fragile. And certainly if you drop them on the floor, they'll break. And it's not much fun, but what happens is that you end up with 100 pieces of pastel instead of one. And those little 100 pieces of pastels, you can then use them for very fine detail. They're never wasted. You can actually crunch it all back up and make a new pastel if you so desire. They're fragile in that way, but they are incredibly robust once they go under glass. Of course, you can smudge them if they aren't under glass, or if your dog walks by with its waggy tail, yep, it'll take your pastel off. But of course that's going to happen, that's common sense. You don't leave your pastel where the dog will get to it. And you don't, hopefully, go by and wipe something on it. But once they go onto the glass, they're as safe as. They're also very, very useful for travelling. I love travelling with my pastels, of course not with this great big collection. But when I'm travelling with a completed work, I have a little folder of foam core. Now, this will house both my paper that I need to work from, used during my travels, and the completed works. And so they're all stacked up like this with pieces of glassine between them, like so. So I can come home from my travels or from workshops with multitudes of work all stacked up in this way. And as long as they're then held together firmly in my folder with some clips, there's nothing moving, there's no abrasion, and so there can't be any smudging. Held securely like that, they will travel wherever in the world you want to take them to. And this will go into my check-through luggage. And I never have any problem with the pastels being destroyed, the surfaces rubbing, or the image being made a mess of. And so you can also send your pastels abroad in the similar way, in a secure holder like this. So I can enter competitions internationally, and they can go unframed, or they can go framed and they go in a float box and arrive safely. As far as travelling with your actual pastels, the pigments themselves, then I always take mine in their sets. If I'm travelling away to do a workshop locally within Australia and I'm actually driving there, then I'll take lots and lots of boxes in their sets, just because it's easier to house in that way. However, if I'm travelling in the plane and I've got luggage constraints, then I'll use my Heilemann box. Now this is a Heilemann box, and there are any number of different kinds of boxes out there, but I particularly like the Heilemann. And this one, we have covers with memory foam that go over the pastels and that get clamped into place. There's a cover for this side and there's a cover for that side, and then that gets closed up into a satchel style of thing, which then has a handle, very easy to carry out on site as well. It can also get attached to a tripod and has armature at the back for holding your pastels. That means with the memory foam process, that means my pastels are held tightly and securely, and they're actually kept clean as well. So it's a terrific way of travelling any distance with your pastel and housing them safely. When I've finished a pastel painting, there are a number of things that I do to ensure that my framer doesn't have too difficult of a job when he's framing with pastel falling off. One thing is to give it a good flick. Another thing would be to put it through a roller. The framer will actually stick a piece of glassine on the surface of the painting and put it through a roller so that compresses the pastel into the surface of the painting, and it's less likely to release that over time. A commonly asked question is, do I use fixative? And no, I don't. I don't find any need for fixative at all. The pastels, once they are under glass, are very secure, and if they are framed with a little pastel trap, which is a space between the surface of the pastel and the mat boards and the glass, then if there was to be any loose pastel dropping, it will fall into that trap behind. Fixative I know that there is a new fixative out there that doesn't change the values of the painting or the tones of the painting, doesn't dull it down. But in general, fixative will dull the tone of the paper by about 3 values, the tone of the pastels by about 3 values. And so something that was really incredibly vibrant is all of a sudden dull. I know that there's some artists who deliberately darken their work by spraying it with fixative and then put in those little highlights, and that's fine too. My quandary with fixative is the fact that you're then putting into what is essentially your pure pigment something that has perhaps the possibility of changing colour over a period of time. And I don't want that. And I found that it still doesn't stop it from totally smudging anyway. I could still smudge the work if I wanted to. And anything that might fall off, any dust that might fall off, would fall off in actually bigger pieces. It's not necessary. And if you have a framer that is a qualified framer, who's a master framer, then they will know how to treat your pastels properly. Now I hope I've whet your appetite for pastels. And if you want to join me at any time for workshops, I do numerous workshops across Australia and internationally. And if you want to look at where I'm teaching and what I am teaching anywhere in the world, go to my website www.lyndiefenbach.com, and you'll find all of the information there along with the contact details. But what I'd like to draw your attention to in particular are my paintaways for 2019. First of all, in March 2019, I'm working with Artival, and we're going to Tasmania. And that is on the 6th to the 10th of March. Now this will not be a plein air workshop. This will be a teaching workshop of pastels, florals and portraits. So welcome, come along to that one. You will be treated stupendously, both with food, with the place that you're staying with, and your learning. The next workshop I want to draw your attention to is one that I'm doing in the Northwest Pacific, over in the States, way up in the top on an island called Marrowstone Island. Now, this is for 5 people only, so you're like getting one-on-one mentorship almost, and it goes from June 22nd to the 28th, and you'll be able to use both your pastels, your watercolours, your oils if you so desire. We'll be doing a lot of en plein air work, but also studio work, doing portraits, florals, whatever you would like to investigate and have my help with. The next one is in Haute-Baron in France, and that's a 10-day workshop, and it's from July 5th to the 14th. It will be a pastel workshop. We will be working en plein air, and we'll also be working in the studio doing all of the other subjects that I love to paint and love to teach. The final one for next year is on Norfolk Island, October the 1st to the 8th, and that again will be an en plein air workshop, and we'll be able to take in the wonderful sights of Norfolk Island. So I hope to see you somewhere in the world, both the rest of this year and in 2019, and in the meantime, happy painting.